here we are. So, the tip of the iceberg. The tip of the iceberg, because essentially we realized we were really analyzing the tip of an iceberg, because our idea was to go and see in the pyramid of Khafre, Khafre. And the idea, it started right from Armando May, because when we talked about it, our idea was to go and see under the Sphinx. And Armando says, yes, yes, under the Sphinx, but we know there are chambers, things, it is not said. People do not talk about it, but there are data indicating there is stuff inside. Wouldn't it be more interesting to look under the pyramid of Khafre? Because under the pyramid of Khafre, there will be something below, inside. And the myth, the legend, the stories say that this pyramid is linked to a whole series of things, as he said before, that should somehow be proven. Because inside, there's a bit of the story of the god Thoth.
And we said, well, come on, let's try, we're there.
The Raiders, we have the Raiders. Let's see what happens. A recap of previous episodes. This was basically Khnum Khufu, the one protected by Khnum. You see, on the right, you can see the section of the pyramid as we know it with a superimposition of the dark black three-dimensional outline of what essentially says that it is inside. You can glimpse at the top that kind of strange multi-level structure with chambers called the Z, with a chamber underneath where there is the tub, where some mistakenly think the poor pharaoh would have been. The Grand Khan Kaleri, which is that sloping, tall, large black thing that descends. Below, we have that small little house, which would essentially be the queen's chamber, which we then discovered with a couple of books that, with the queen, it has nothing to do with. At the bottom, there's the unfinished chamber. We've always wondered. It took them 4,000 years, damn, to finish a chamber they could have done earlier. Seems like they didn't feel like it anymore. Who knows? And to the left, up and down, a couple of photographs of the three-dimensional model that we proposed in the article in remote sensing, that shows things that no one had ever seen before. At the top, you can make out those kinds of gadgets descending like a giant fog going below ground zero, meaning underground. We'll talk about this more today because we've seen this stuff again from another perspective. There are these structures that instead go up into the pyramid, which are connected by a gallery that I usually color red or anyway light brown. You know, I don't see colors well. So below, from another viewpoint, you can see essentially at least 12 rooms underground that we have called the basements. Evidently, the pharaoh did not want to pay the property tax, did not want to pay, and he hid them beneath, never reported them. And there is a whole series of structures inside that we can see both essentially in the second book that I wrote with Filippo, where there is essentially also all the technology that Filippo has somehow described to you now. Let's look at the state of Khafre. You see a three-dimensional model. What is known, we see from above on the left. We see it from the side, in the center, and an enlargement of the latter. As you can see, the pyramid is empty. There is nothing inside. Below, right under ground zero, and this is what we see in this enlargement. There are essentially two tiny rooms, a couple of corridors with strange shapes on these shapes, we have already focused our attention in a previous conference where we showed how everything we imagined for the pyramid of Khanum Khufu, meaning that the pyramid functioned with vibration, an instrument made of water, with rock, essentially, and with air, and that it produced those necessary vibrations that were used to heal, in quotes, the pharaoh when this had reached the final moment of his life and this life needed to be extended a bit. And as you can see, there's nothing inside this damn pyramid. Is it possible, we wondered, that the ancient Egyptians spent a ton of money to build a mountain of stone with nothing inside? And so we had to go and see. Tama. And we started to apply this technique, that is the transformation of a photonic signal into a phononic signal. We look at the vibrations. We take a photograph of the sound of the pyramids. So, this is a photograph as the satellite's eye would see the pyramid in question. As you can see, this photograph has a characteristic. It is not how we would see it with our own eyes if we were on the satellite, because it has strange light points that are not quite like the ones we will see, and then it is elongated. It looks more like a rectangle rather than actually a square. And we need to understand this thing. Why the satellite sees the pyramid in this way. Pretend that the satellite antenna, for simplicity, is a rectangle. This is the antenna. So the satellite does not have the antenna straight, perfectly aligned with the sides of the pyramid. The pyramid, imagine, is straight like this. The satellite is tilted in this way. And not only on this axis, but it's also tilted on this other axis. So what happens is that when the signals that will then originate this type of photograph are brought back, the signals are distorted by the fact that this antenna has a position that is not what we might choose in some way to see the object perfectly along the x-axis and along the y-axis. The tomographies we will be doing have the same problem. That is, they have an issue where you need to know they are photographs distorted in this way for this reason. Well, once you know it, the problem is gone. One of the first tomographies we did was this one you see on the left. So let's retrace the story a little with these tomographies, how we experienced it in some way. The first photographs, we looked at this stuff, went to bed, couldn't sleep, and looked again the next day, hours in front of these tomographies to understand what they meant. And here is an important detail that I believe is worth to note. When we conduct research of this kind or any other kind, there is a conscientious parameter that basically you never write in the books. You never say, my consciousness has increased by 3 or 4 degrees at the moment I was doing this research. When does consciousness increase? Consciousness increases when you look at the nail in the wall so many times until you realize that there is a nail in the wall. And so, in looking at these photos, these tomographies, a spontaneous process of gaining awareness arises. The first time you look at it, you don't understand anything. So you see here, yes, you see there's a triangle, and you say, oh, you'll see it's the size of the pyramid. Whoa, you see it has different colors. You say, well, okay, because energetically, the pixels corresponding to this photograph vibrate differently. The energy put into play, the computer, the software, marks it for you as a different color. All right, fine, we agree. Then you start to see a strange color tube that descends to the center of the pyramid, which seems to be made in layers somehow, and to which the other corresponds towards the center, to a kind of tube that rises colored in another color, and you say, bah, what is this stuff here? Technically, there shouldn't be anything. Then something else is done.
You take images like this, which is a starting image.
Yeah, where basically it's a north-south image. That is, you have to think about entering into the image you are looking at. That is, you have the entrance of the pyramid in front, the enters in front, and the section we made in the middle of the pyramid is like cutting a cake.
Well, you see that cutting this cake is not that simple because you cut a cake and see the layers of cake, cream, chocolate, everything that's there, candied fruits.
Tomography has a series of things that make it incredibly complicated, but this complication, a scientific term you'll see, gives you more information because it's complicated as there is a lot inside you. And your awareness in analyzing the various tomographies must be able to discern all these things that are there, because tomography is a phononic photograph, meaning every pixel of that strip that we have calculated feels the vibratory information of all the pixels that are in the strip. But not only because it feels, because this pyramid strip senses all the information of the things in front and all the vibrational information of the things behind. So this photograph not only tells you what is in this section of the cake, but also what is inside, in front, and behind. And only by knowing this thing can we go looking for what the slice we have cut contains, trying to understand what has nothing to do with this vibration, because it actually relates to vibrations of things that are behind and vibrations of things that are in front. So while this tomography, these colors of this tomography represent the fundamental data of the energy of the pixels that move, so the frequencies that they move. So we can immediately say that the external part of the pyramid vibrates differently from the internal part because the colors are marked. With this system, we tell the computer to show us these strong differences, and it shows them to you. Because if I tell the computer to show me differences but delete some signals because I don't want to see them, the computer shows them to me. That is, the computer applies filters to me.
Applies, removes, but does not alter the relationship that exists between the different things.
On the other hand, the photograph is another thing. You take the tomographic image on the left and tell the computer, since I didn't understand anything, help me highlight some vibrations in the form of color while others not. What does it mean? It means that I am helped to understand some information, but others on the right side sometimes get erased, exaggerated, while the true information is what the computer gives me on the left side. Let's keep in mind these two methodologies because we need both to then understand and interpret the tomographies. On this side, now that we know it, no, on the right side, we see that the bottom part, that is this kind of cannon that goes down, really seems, and there I can assure you we didn't understand a thing. Why? What is this thing here? Bah, it must be a reflection. Maybe the technique isn't working. We'll talk about reflections later because here, like an optical physical image, it has reflections. The sound image has echoes, as if we were in this room and there was an echo. What is an echo? A reflection that instead of being luminous is a sound reflection. And here, since we are working with sound reflections are present. So it made sense to see things that didn't actually exist, that were ghosts. So we say, wait, let's change position. Look somewhere else.
Here's the fundamental problem. If I have to build a three-dimensional model, I can't see an object from just one photograph. I need to scan at least from two positions, but maybe two aren't enough. Let's say three, X, Y, and Z. And then we asked ourselves, having the starting image in front, from the other side, let's say the Russian side, to be clear, right? The American side, the Russian side. Because the north is at this point of the pyramid that we are looking at. The entrance is always to the north. On the Russian side, what do you see? You immediately see something fundamental. The two sides of the pyramid do not have the same slope. For what reason? Because these two sides of the pyramid are not the two sides we saw like this before. When we turn the pyramid this way, we see on the left one side, on the right, so side one on the right, side number 3, because side number 2 is in the middle and cannot be seen. And this time, that thing we saw as something that went from the bottom to the top, reaching the apex of the pyramid, is no longer just one thing, but many things. In this thing, 1, 2, 3, 4 were seen and a little behind, maybe 5. What do you want it to mean? It means that when we saw the tomography that we saw before, all these things were there, but they were one behind the other. When we moved, now we see them not one behind the other anymore, but they still occupy a precise space. So, another issue of the tomography is that the tomography is processed with a scientific technique called the Tripa effect. That is, the Tripa effect. What does this mean? It means that once we have the tomography, we can enlarge it, squeeze it, because the data is not altered. We know that a pixel, which should be a small square, we have turned it into a small rectangle, but we know this. Instead of having 20 small squares, there are 20 small rectangles, but we know that we have squeezed it. So why is it done this way? Because we try to understand in very large tomographies, focusing on highlighting a part of the tomography, while the other part is not of interest at that moment. In this context, the tomography we see, basically, you see north-south, I wrote them, to show how we arrange things. And what do we see? We see which above, firstly, we squashed it. So it's no longer a pyramid like this, but it's a pyramid that is practically almost a line. But in the middle, we see colored spots. I see them orange. I don't know what color you will see them. We see two very large ones. Something in the middle, maybe behind the large spot on the right. There is another spot that might be behind. In the center of these spots, there is definitely something, and to the left, there is a small spot further away down there. And we begin to see that these spots have a structure because we have brought them a bit closer. We performed a better Fourier transform. We have somehow brought it into focus better these things. How do you focus this thing? It's simple. You take many measurements, many images, tun, 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 tun. What do all these images do? They take the background noise and they kill it, because in an image, since the background noise is chaotic, in one image it can be positive on that point, on that pixel. In another image, it will be negative. And so, in the end, the background noise is killed. And what remains is only the signal. You see, if Fourier didn't exist, we wouldn't be here today. Absolutely. I have been to Fourier's grave in Paris at the Père Lachaise cemetery, it is called, and I discovered Fourier's grave. I mean, I started crying over Fourier's grave. And we, looking at this thing, start to see that at the top, in the central body of the pyramid, there are these spots, there are these objects. At that moment, Filippo and I looked at the bottom part. whether at this are these strange things coming down. It says they are reflections, they are errors, and damn it, maybe who knows why, but we will understand. We need to do other tomographies. And we understood it well, of course. And so we did the other tomographies. See, this is north-south, so this is east-west. So look here. We have this. What could be the disadvantage of, as I was saying before, when doing a tomography, having everything stuck to this plate in front and everything behind it? If you notice well, when the radar is not the antenna perfectly parallel to what we want to see, but is tilted, it's the same. It's as if the antenna was straight and the image was bent. That is, it's as if we were seeing an image in 3 dimensions. Fictitious, because we see a fake 3-dimensionality. And if you look closely at this image, it's true that at the top we always see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 things. Then behind on the left, there are some other little things that we don't know what they are. And on the right, something very confusing still. But if you notice on the left, it's as if we see one side. Now I'll show you better. One side of the pyramid going in a certain direction, the vanishing point, and practically the plane of the pyramid that should appear as a straight line actually appears as a real plane. Sure, there are always these darn things coming down. Or who knows what they are. And then they are basically all, in some tomographies you see them better, in some tomographies you see them worse, but this depends on the fact that we wanted to choose a setting that highlighted the top part in this context. This is essentially the plane that the human eye, at the level of awareness, makes you understand. So look, there's stuff above. And damn it, there's stuff below too. It's probably the usual reflections. However, one starts to see a structure of something that no one had ever seen. Inside the pyramid of Khafre, on the upper floor, there are things that vibrate in a different way. How many of these things are there? If you look on the left, there are 2 very prominent ones. There's something towards the center, and there are at least a couple more towards the right. Then there is, to the far right, a very precise structure, and then the rest seems to be underneath. But it will be, one must be careful, one must have, is the possibility to see things better. So we need to increase awareness. Let's go see these big structures, try to understand how they are made. Why did we count those immediately? Because they were the ones that were seen better, meaning the ones with fewer errors. They are the biggest. And let's look in front and face, as they say. And in this context, keep in mind that in this chromatography, you enter from the right. The entrance of the pyramid is from the right. Then you descend below where Belzoni's chamber should be somewhere, which is not visible. And then I'll show you why it's not visible.
And everything you see is stuff that's on top.
In front, there are 2 things that seem layered. Do you see them? 5 layers with a kind of roof, a bit like a pagoda. Behind the one on the right, you can see there's another one that's very similar. But behind the one on the left, you can't see anything. However, in the center, you can see there's another bright spot. Let's go take a closer look. We'll get some help from the computer. Can you show me better if you can, dear computer? Can you highlight some parts of the structure?
And here,
it occurred to us that maybe we had already seen these structures. Look at the structure on the left. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 levels, and then a roof. Let's call it that for now. A hut. Underneath, you see there is a little square, a bit darker. This reminded us a lot of something. Now you can also see on the right side that there's roughly the exact same structure, and behind it, if you notice, there's one that looks a lot like the one in front.
Let's take a closer look at it. You see, I also included the RGB graphs of the colors blue, green, and red because we processed only, in this case, one type of color. You see on the left side at the bottom, I made a little circle with a question mark. Do you see that it looks like there's something in there? But what the heck does this stuff remind you of? Let's look at it again from a distance. You know, the map of the territory, when you don't understand something, you need to step back to try to see and maybe understand this.
Maybe it didn't look like this, but we had already seen this one. Filippo also showed it to you in his presentation.
It's a room with the letter Z on it. And look, maybe inside the room on the right, sorry, on the left, maybe there's a strange spot that who knows, maybe it's something. We can't figure this out because we sacrifice half of the radar synthesis to use the other half of the synthesis to obtain the colors, let's say, of this tomography. How many of these things are there? It seemed there were 5 from all the tomographies. We necessarily had to see everything from above, because from above it would be clearly visible. We cut the pyramid horizontally so we could see, hopefully, how many of those things are in there. Here, on the left, we have the photograph of the Khafre pyramid cut in half like a sandwich. And you look at it and don't understand anything, and you tell the computer, then show it to me better, because damn it, otherwise. And so we get the view on the right, and I'll show you something right away. Actually, I will show you 2 or 3. There are luminous things that run along the left edge, at the top and on the right. Luminous things. There is a spot. Bottom left is a spot. And what on earth is this spot? We will figure this out easily. However, there are things, and these things fall into 2 categories. Those that are hard to see, those that are easy to see, but they are all there.
The stain.
All right, the phononic light spots. You see, these are somehow illuminated pyramids from the outside. Look, these are phononic light spots. That one, in particular on the left at the bottom, is exactly what happens in our tomography, where sound creates a reverberation. This had already happened to us in the pyramid of Khufu. This reverb, you say. Damn it, there's a reverb that blocks all the information there, and instead it will give you information, because every time we do a chromatography and an analysis, a tomography from above, we can immediately orient north and south without much hassle, because the spot is always on the same side. A phonic spot. So we take all this data and put it all together. All the bright spots in all the tomographies must always be identified. They must always be the same. From above, we start from above. You see one fundamental thing. The center of the pyramid is not, as you might expect, in the center of the square of the topography, but it's shifted. Why? It's simple. For 2 fundamental reasons. One, because the radar, it is distorted compared to the image of the pyramid. And so, like in the photograph that seemed like a truly optical photograph, it stretches the pyramid in some way so that it is no longer a true square, but becomes a rectangle. So one part of the pyramid has data closer together. The other part of the pyramid has them a bit more spread out. And so the center is where Belzonian chamber is. And you see it, there is essentially a small rod. Then there are 4 structures that are those 4 little circles that you find in all the tomographies we have seen, and that from right to left, from north to south, from east to west, are always the same number. You understand exactly what the position of these circles is. And kinky shan, kinky end. You also understand why they are seen this way. So when we have built a 3-dimensional model with the 3-dimensional model in hand and the tomography on the other side, you tilt the 3-dimensional model to achieve the same optical effect as the tomography. And as you can see, now, if it's not simple, it took 3 months, maybe 4, that is, to recognize all the bright spots in the structures that we saw in the different tomographies. It is evident that when we upload everything online in about 10 days, including this slideshow, you at home, you can do the exercise of going to see, going back and discovering for yourselves if we try to trick you or if we have really used our time in some way and not wasted yours to understand exactly the points without wasting time. Let's return here. Now we know one fundamental thing. From approximately the center, 2 bright paths start very close to each other, originating from the spot somehow downward and not exactly at the center, but slightly shifted to the left. These 2 bright paths go upward. So, you need to remember what the pyramid looks like. Below, there are 2 pathways, an entrance that goes to ground 0, goes underground, and then ascends, and another from above. But these 2 pathways are one beneath the other, and the other then reconnects, and will reconnect at the end before the Belzoni chamber in the final horizontal corridor. These 2 objects, which you see one above the other, if the radar is exactly above, because if the radar is here, you see them side by side. This is why these 2 things seem like 2 paths to you while they are just one path.
After that, there are brighter spots and less bright spots.
We will understand later why this happens. And you will understand that the brighter spots are brighter because there is something above and something below that evidently increase the vibration of that particular point of the thing. Whereas when there is nothing below, we only have, for example, the vibration of the thing above or vice versa. There is only something underneath and nothing on top. And that's when these strange bluish halos appear. Meanwhile, I've started to get the hang of it. They are close to the bright areas. They surround them somehow. But it's something that vibrates little. It's something that is barely visible. But the fundamental thing is, what is the stuff on the right? These 2, at least 2 paths, at least 2 luminous paths, going from bottom to top. I just want to point out that if you look at these 2 luminous paths in the bottom right corner and slowly move your eye upward, you'll notice that occasionally the simplest thing was that there was a horizontal path. Trim, 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 as if they were from a comb. The petals, so to speak, the teeth of a comb. And if you look closely, I don't want to waste your time. You can do it at home at your own pace if you feel like it. In some areas of these vibrations, the combs, the teeth of the combs are evenly spaced. Who knows what it might be? What did Filippo do? I took the pyramid and cut it at different points, at different levels. Look at the top left. The pyramid, you always see the usual distortion of the pyramid, right? As the radar sees it. She cuts in position 1, in position 2, in position 3, and in position 4. Let's look at the tomographies at different heights. At different heights, it's like you're focusing with a different focal distance, because here, the more the image, the topography, gets closer to the object you are looking at, the more the focus increases, meaning the precision. In fact, and this is the first step, number 4 is much more precise, less blurred than number 1. In number 1, you can see these strange little combs, this time seen from above. But in number 1, there is less. In number 2, there is more. In number 3, there is more. In number 4, there is more, which is almost at ground zero. Keep in mind, I have to tell you this or you won't understand. This little square, no, the little squares we have here, 1, 2, 3, 4, don't correspond to a square because there's the tripa effect, The side of the pyramid, the pyramid should be a square. And here, what you see is that the strip containing these strange combs is under one side, which is the side, the American West, in the pyramid. In this context, and the tomographies, you'll see that the light spot serves, entering from the left. The entrance is almost below the spot, and so the little comb is exactly under the ground zero, under the side at the end of the pyramid. So in this case, the tomography that interests us is only the top half. The square of the pyramid has become a rectangle. But this strange structure, what is this stuff here? We had to take a closer look. You see, at the top left, we have the usual spot. We know that the entrance of the pyramid is below the spot. Let's look at the worst case, because we are not interested in looking at what we saw before. We want to focus our attention on that side there, the side where there is something flowing from left to right, and below something that looks like combs. So what do? You apply awareness, which means you look at it until you've understood what it is. So, obviously, there is an effect that some fool might call pareidolia, meaning at some point you see what isn't there. Know that what you see, you will be able to see again with the acquisition of awareness in all other chromatographies. Tomographies, seeing them from other places, changing the point of observation, changing the map of the territory. Let's take a good look at this thing up close. So, the top part shows you, I removed the colors because they essentially bother you. That is, they are additional information that is not needed here. When we look at this thing, you see I've oriented the little square of the pyramid's plate on the right, so that at the bottom you have the light areas corresponding to the things we are going to look at. At the bottom left, we see this luminous path made with tuning forks. They all look like tuning forks lined up. They appear shifted like this because the antenna, I remind you, is not aligned with the pyramid. It's shifted like this. So it's as if you had a straight antenna, but what you are looking at is shifted.
So this inclination is one that gives the inclination of the radar antenna.
Look down in it. Look carefully. And as you look, pretend that you understand they are tuning forks. Jesus says that in Kasagichi there are disturbances, so there are lines going from left to right that are sometimes dark, sometimes reflecting light. Until one day, after months, I understood what it was about. And above, I'll show you the reconstruction. There are these combs that are basically tuning fork shapes. And in the middle, there's a sort of rectangular shape that the radar sees. Let's assume it is granite. the speed of sound in granite is 4,000 meters per second. It appears transparent to you. It appears like glass. So imagine having this thing with a rectangular glass rod inside. And here, the glass shows you the things in front in a certain way and the things behind distorted. And this type of distortion is exactly what we see in the end. In this context, only the acquisition of awareness makes you understand that things are this way, because otherwise you won't get to the bottom of it. What then, in the end, what is the structure that comes out of here? The one we see below. There's something running from left to right, 7 objects that look like tuning forks. And here inside the tuning forks, I didn't include it. But I'll show it to you later. There's another corridor, question mark, that is at the peak of the curve of the tuning forks at the top and travels the same distance from left to right. What the heck is a structure like this for? This is a question we don't know. Look, there are these structures, for example, these giant tuning forks, which could essentially be structures that simply serve to support something. To the left, just imagine, is the roof of a library located in a Dutch or Norwegian city. It is a gigantic library, probably meant for something else initially. Then they didn't know what to do with it, so they made a library. And over there is a structure that supports a dam. So structures like these exist and evidently have their own kind of use. But how strange. It looks like a tuning fork, just as we are looking at the vibrating stuff. Huh? How strange, eh?
Let's move forward. Let's move forward. Let's leave this thing pending for a moment.
Let's do another tomography. The other tomography is essentially south, left, north, right. And we see from another point of view that we are seeing only one side of the pyramid, that is the long, long, long one, dragging on the ground, the one that goes roughly from the center to the right, because we clearly have the impression that the other one over there, the one on the right, is instead much steeper. Why does this happen? For the usual reason. The antenna, look, we have used different types of radar, so depending on the inclinations of the different antennas, you should not expect the same slope in all the topographies, because it is not like that. What do you see? You see this and say, I didn't understand anything. The only thing you understand is that there is a pyramid that does this for the king, because you know it's a pyramid. Otherwise, you wouldn't even know that. So let's try to understand better. We get help from the computer, and immediately something interesting appears. In the top left, we see a black rectangle. This black rectangle on the left then has a series of much clearer things that vibrate. Also, they have higher energy. Dark black instead means it vibrates less. And next to the stuff, central on the left side, if you notice, there is a kind of small square, the same size as the black rectangle that is less black. But it's there. Let's try to bring it out better. If we go on to change the colors again, at the bottom we see the rectangle that was black before has become a color like orange-ish, I think. You see what on earth color it is.
On the other side, at the end, you see there is the square.
At the same height, of the same color, and in the middle you can see, but because now we know what they are, all the little dots that represent the 5Z structures, which we absolutely wouldn't know what they are if we hadn't done the other topographies.
But here you can see them, and if you count them carefully, there are 5.
Let's look at it even more closely. Let's search for the information. So we have a big black rectangle on one side and a big black square on the other. In the middle, the 5Zs. What could the big black rectangle be if not a place where there is absolutely nothing and therefore does not vibrate at all?